of excited about today's talk. I've spent some time on this and putting a few things together, and we're doing a sequence on the development of the soul. So I hope today's talk might be helpful in the development of that sequence. It's entitled More About Soul. Dear mighty soul, dear mighty soul, after last month's teaching on the notion that we are eternal souls, when I say to you that you are a mighty soul, I hope you might now add that you are a mighty eternal soul. Such an important thing for each one of us to understand. Before I proceed to this month's teaching, which is more about soul, let me just briefly review last month's teaching. In a nutshell, we talked last month about the notion that we have awakened. We have awakened to our true self. We realize that we are eternal souls. It's not just that we're nice people. It's not just that we have nice personalities, but rather each one of us is an eternal soul. And the reason why we are eternal souls is because we have never left the source energy that is really at our center. We continue to be connected to that source energy. So in that connection, we realize that we have that same eternal quality as the divine itself. And then we talked about three specific aspects about who I am. The first thing we talked about was the notion that, first of all, I've awakened. I, like the Buddha, have awakened. I have awakened to a true understanding of who I am. In addition to having awakened, we then stress the second point that when you are earnest, when you are sincere, then still points begin to open. The still point of your higher mind and your open heart begins to open as you become more sincere and earnest. And when those still points open, then you realize that no matter where you are or what you're doing, you know exactly what needs to be done. I think it's amazing that we feel that confidence in what we're doing. No matter where we are or what's occurring, we feel guided as to the proper course of action. And then the last particular thing we talked about was the notion that because we are connected to the source, we feel that God energy with each one of us, and we simply extend it in kindness to all others. So with that little summary, what I'd like to do is to give you a few more things about soul, some things I think that are very important. And the way that I'd like to do it is to focus on Don Miguel Ruiz's third of the four agreements. The third agreement very simply is don't make assumptions. Search out the truth. So what I want to suggest to you is that there were three false assumptions that I made in my life, or perhaps maybe not made in my life, but were kind of foisted upon me in my life. Perhaps maybe these assumptions might have been false for you as they were for me. Let me begin with the first false assumption. In my experience of life, I have found that many of the people who really cared for me and who really focused their love upon me, what I found was that I assumed that these people knew what they were talking about. I assumed that my family, my religion, and our society were giving me the proper guidance in life. Again, I never doubted the love of my family or the concern of my religion or society, but it just seemed that wherever I turned, there was always limitation. There was always restrictions. It was always staying within the rules. No one ever said, explore yourself. No one ever said, life's a journey. People would say, you're looking through life through rose-colored glasses. No one helped me to really explore myself. And then things began to change a little bit. Some new things began to develop as I began to explore myself. New things, however, were still looked upon with disdain because they seemed to be dismissed quietly, and most people felt like Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. It's traditions that you must follow, overcoming newness and self-exploration. I clearly understand that things were different at that time, but even now, people in my family, in religion, and in society still do not seem to understand that we are evolving a new sense of self. These limitations, these restrictions, although they existed in the past, I'm very happy to say we're moving beyond them because we begin to feel that each one of us is internally guided, that we have something within ourselves, not just that we trust, but that we are confident in, and that we feel that we have a spiritual connection to the God Spirit, so that no matter what we're engaged in, we feel that that direction is coming forth in our lives. It's not just that, in a sense, we realize that we have a presence within us, but it's that confidence in that presence. It's that confidence in the present, because we know that we are in alignment with the God energy, and that God's Spirit is guiding us in life. That was my first false assumption. I just felt that my family, religion, and society, I just assumed they knew things that I came to understand perhaps they didn't know. My second false assumption. The second false assumption is summed up in the phrase, nobody's perfect, you are only human. Well, ever since I was a child, this assumption seemed weird to me. It just seemed untrue to me. I just always felt that we were inherently good. I just felt that an excuse like you're only human was really an excuse for not being human. Or it was an excuse in a sense for kind of like a concession. It was like maybe you had a bad day here or there, and, well, you were just imperfect, and pretty much that's the way that it was. But to begin as a child, I would just say to myself, well, why would God make something imperfect? It just didn't make any sense to me, despite the assumption of many of the people in my life. I must say that it took me a while to get over this, but I especially appreciated a few teachings that were very helpful to me. The first one was my good friend Plato. Plato, many moons ago, very simply said that what we should try to do in life is to be as perfect as the good is perfect. The good was his name for God. And he basically said that, well, you should strive to be like the good because you have the same energy as the good. Now that made sense to me, that we have the same energy within us. We have to claim it, but the very same energy from the good is the energy within us. I just want you to know that was a big relief to me, to know that at least Plato seemed to see it that way. And then you had those wonderful lines of Jesus in the New Testament when he said, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Well, that seemed to make a lot more sense to me as well, that we should be as perfect as the divine energy is perfect because we have the divine energy within us. We are that soul being that has this energy. So I always wonder, well, why didn't people talk about this? Why didn't religions talk about being perfect as opposed to being a sinner? Well, I have two ideas that I'll talk about in a moment, but let me just pursue this line of thinking. Then there was that teaching of Hinduism. And the teaching of Hinduism very simply was there is this universal energy called the Brahman, And the Brahman has its presence in you. The presence of the Brahman in you is called the Atman. I just said to myself, yes, again, yes, that's right. There's that something within us that is just absolutely wonderful. And then a fourth one that just made so much sense to me was the Japanese teaching of the notion of Ren. The teaching is very simple, but it simply says that each one of us is inherently good. Each one of us is inherently good. And I would just say to myself, well, that makes sense. We are inherently good. But if we're inherently good, why don't people tell us that? Why does perhaps my family or my religion or society not stress the beauty and the goodness within you? Well, there are two reasons that I thought about. You know the first one. The first reason was probably from the notion of control. Whether it was your family saying to you, well, who do you think you are? Or a religion saying to you, you know you're a sinner, be careful. Or a society saying to you, it's human nature to fail. All of these particular things seemed in a sense to be trying to control. Now whether it was control or not, who knows? But I can remember my family saying many times, if we're not watching you, remember, God is watching you. And you just understand how there was a sense of control perhaps. But the real underlying reason still seemed to me that the reason why many people said that you're only human was something within you that was saying that you're not. That there was a calling within you that people seemed to turn a deaf ear to. That there was a calling that you are not simply human. You really are an eternal soul made in the very substance of the God Spirit. The perfection of that calling, I think, is one that we have answered today. We just realize that that energy within us, that eternal soulness, is a participation in the universal energy, and that we are quite capable of living up to the perfection of that energy. What I'm going to suggest to you is that that energy within you has become a new reference point. Your reference point is not, I'm only human. Your reference point very simply is, I'm an eternal soul, living in the joyfulness of what I'm capable of doing and being. So I just want to suggest to you, buck up. Remember who you are, that each one of us is capable of bringing heaven to earth, because each one of us is here to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Doesn't that make sense? As opposed to some of the other things that seem to be more nonsensical. There was a third false assumption that was kind of foisted upon me. This assumption was that, well, you could not be happy while you're living here on earth, and that you had to wait till you got to heaven before you could be happy. It was kind of like earth is kind of a test, or worse, earth was a valley of tears to be endured. These words just seem so contradictory, not just to the guidance of Jesus, but to many others who in essence said, when Jesus taught his disciples to pray, that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, now it seemed to me that if Jesus taught that God's will be done here on earth as it is in heaven, well, why in the heck would you have to wait to go to heaven? It just didn't seem to make any sense. It just made no sense to me. But what did make sense to me What did make sense to me is that we are eternal souls bringing heaven to earth. It's our duty, our responsibility as creating beings to bring that energy into manifestation because you're the heavenly energy wherever you are. It is your eternal soulness wherever you're going to be, here or beyond, because you are that energy that is aligned with the God Spirit, that right here, right now, right here, right now, each one of us has that presence within us. And while each one of us lives it subjectively in our own way, objectively, we are in that same energy with that vibration. There is a oneness. There is a oneness that vibrates through each one of us when we are sincere and earnest, and when we are coming from that soul place that is within us. Well, in conclusion, what I would suggest to you is that I had made 3 false assumptions in life. The first one, that so many limitations seemed to be placed upon me because I assumed that other people knew what they were talking about. And then I found out perhaps maybe they didn't, and I needed to explore myself, confident of the guidance I found. I also removed the false assumptions of the limited human nature. Rather than saying I'm only human, to be able to say I am ready, willing, and able to bring heaven to earth. And lastly, I think I've pretty well removed that notion of being happy and content, not because you have to wait till you get to heaven, but being happy and content right here, right now, because we know what we're bringing with us and not looking for it somewhere else. You may recall at the end of last month's teaching, I said, the secret of life is really learning to remember who you really are. And what I would just want to suggest to you is that this secret of life is clearly known. The secret of life is clearly known to each one of us. We are eternal, beautiful souls, creating the good, the beautiful, and the holy here on the planet. This is pretty good, huh? This is good. There'll be more coming in the next couple of months. Let me take you into meditation. Let me now lead you into meditation, and what a joy it is to do so. So let's begin first of all by just being thankful that we have this time together, and especially that we could explore our soul, to be able to move beyond maybe past assumptions that don't quite hold true, so that we might come to some other things that do seem to be true. Fully now dedicate yourself to this meditation. Let us now begin the meditation by simply being attentive to our natural breathing rhythm, just feeling the breath coming into ourselves, feeling the breath going out of ourselves, focusing on your breathing rhythm. If a thought comes into your mind, just let it pass and return to the rhythm of your breathing. Please begin. And just to help you focus on your breathing, when you inhale, just say to yourself the word in. When you exhale, say to yourself the word out. In and out, your natural breathing rhythm, nothing forced, but focused. If a thought comes in, just let it pass. Please continue. And now what I ask you to do is, would you just simply place your hand over your heart, lung area, and would you just feel the breath coming in and feel the breath going out. Just feel the movement in and out. Although subtle, it's clearly distinguishable. Please feel the in and the out. Now, while you're sitting here, I'm going to suggest that we observe a couple of things. The first one is, would you notice that it seems like your whole body is breathing? It's not just your lungs, but there seems to be an energy which all of a sudden is pervading your whole body, as though your body is breathing. Would you just notice that? Your body breathing according to your rhythm. You may now place your hand back on your lap, but as you do so, I'm going to ask you to notice a second thing. Would you notice how peaceful and calm you feel? Just notice that. Now, would you understand that this calmness within you is the same calmness within everyone? That the spirit within you, your soul, is the same spirit within everyone else. Right here in this room, there is the oneness. It's not hard for us to imagine, is it? Imagine people living as one. You just have to see it. Oh yes, there it is, a oneness. Not a fabrication, but a truth. Yes, there it is. And now, would you notice a third thing? That this peace and calmness within you, this oneness, has an identity within it. That identity within the peace is you. It is your soulness. It is an attention point. Would you notice that? You are an attention point. You are an attention point of the greater energy. From this attention point, you can no longer do an unkind thing. It's not in you anymore. You've awakened. And from this attention point, this is where you create the good things, the beautiful things, the holy things that are important to you. It is from this place that you are bringing heaven to the planet. And the neat thing is, you're not the only one. More and more of us are doing it together. And more of us will do it even more and even more together, because it's just the truth. No more false assumptions. Maureen will now lead us in song number 19, Prayer of St. Francis. And would you just see yourself in these words? See yourself in these words. These aren't about Francis specifically. They're just about us. And then number 16, Blessing to the World. Of your peace, where there's hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your healing power. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving of ourselves that we receive, and in dying that we are born to eternal life. Make me a channel of your peace. is a blessing to the world. You are the heart, you are the hands, you are the voice of spirit on earth, and who you are, and all you do is a blessing to the world. We are the heart, we are the hands, we are the voice of spirit on earth, and who we are, and all we do is a blessing to the world. And who you are, and all you do is a blessing to the world. It's wonderful to take these words to heart. And then proceed therefrom. And just when you're ready now, bring that attention, that lovely place within you, back into this room. Without moving from that loving place. And again, without moving from that loving place, bring that energy back into your body. No movement. And especially without any movement from that loving place within you, just gently open your eyes and allow the smile on your face to exhibit the smile in your spirit.